Well, good morning, everyone. This is George Whitesides. I'm the chair of the Space Advisory Board for Virgin Galactic, and really pleased to be with you all around the world for today's session on the next frontier, space technologies. We've got a terrific group assembled, and we look forward to getting into questions with all of you today. So I'm just going to start off with a brief introduction, and then we'll go into our wonderful panel and all that they'll bring to help everyone understand the benefits and challenges for space sustainability.
Sorry, we got confused. Like they try to do a little test. We're not live yet. Sybil, can you tell us when we're actually going? Sybil, can you tell us when we're going live?
Hey, everyone.
Okay.
What do you see when you imagine the future? When we picture what's to come, we often think of innovations that take us to new heights. Some of them are already here, and every day, thousands more make the jump from our imagination into reality. Nowhere is this more evident than here in Japan. Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies are fundamentally transforming the way we do things. All this is happening so fast, and we must do more than just keep up. These emerging technologies open up boundless possibilities of what our future could look like. Technology is not a simple solution to our problems. It poses questions that we need to answer and guidelines we need to write together. That's why we're all here. A global event hosted by Japan that brings together the world's leading voices across disciplines and geographies. How technology will shape our tomorrow depends on the choices we make today. And that starts now.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Wherever you are in the world, welcome. My name is George Whitesides. I am the chairman of the Space Advisory Board of Virgin Galactic, and it's a great pleasure to be hosting today's session on space technologies. We have a really fantastic panel assembled today from around the world to talk about different aspects of the benefits of space technology for planet Earth, as well as some of the challenges that we have going forward. And so we're going to get into that very soon. What I'd love to do is just to say a brief word about each of our panelists, then I'll make a few introductory remarks, and then we'll get into a discussion with everyone. First, we're very pleased to have Minister Al-Amiri from the UAE, the Minister of State for Advanced Technology, as well as the Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology of the UAE. She's also a young global leader for the World Economic Forum. We're very pleased to have Anusha Ansari, the Chief Executive Officer of the X Prize Foundation, in addition to many other distinguished achievements that she's had, and Will Marshall, who's the co-founder and CEO of Planet, an incredible company based in the United States. Before we get into things, let me just provide a few framing comments, and then we'll start going around to our panel. Space is a critical piece of our modern way of life and will become increasingly so in the coming years with capabilities that only space can deliver. From the promise of connecting the remaining 50% of the world population to the internet and to communications, to providing a constantly higher resolution and more frequent Earth imagery, to being essential for measuring a huge component of critical climate variables, the space sector is delivering out of this world solutions by leveraging advances in many technologies such as AI, robotics, advanced manufacturing, materials, and many other areas. It is important that we maintain safe access to and operations in orbit and safeguard the sustainability of space to continue to enjoy current and future promised benefits, as well as to expand the sector through tourism, human exploration, energy, resource generation, and scientific endeavors. I will say that the World Economic Forum is taking a leadership role in the area of space sustainability, and that is through something called the Space Sustainability Rating effort, which is an international effort co-led by the Forum to create an incentive-based mechanism to motivate operators, manufacturers, and launch providers to operate more responsibility when it comes to on-orbit operations. So this session is going to explore the most exciting technologies that space brings to help solve problems on Earth, as well as some of the key solutions for maintaining space sustainability. So that is just a quick introduction. And I'm personally very excited about this because, you know, space connects all aspects of the positive and the challenges that we face. Space can detect wildfires, illegal fishing, even human trafficking, and hopefully we'll get into some of that, as well as, you know, really connecting the world and bringing unprecedented transparency to some of the key issues. And it's also such an inspiring area for kids around the world who are interested in, you know, learning about space exploration. Minister Al-Amiri can talk about the incredible efforts that the UAE has led in terms of Mars exploration and other areas. So, so let's just get into it, I think, and have a great conversation. We're going to start off with the minister, and it would be great if you would speak a little bit about how space is important for the UAE, and also maybe talk a little bit about the recent huge success of the orbiter around Mars. So over to you.
Thank you, George, and thank you everyone for joining us today in this what will shape up to be an interesting conversation about space. The Emirates has endeavored to look at the space sector generally to develop its science and technology capabilities with the aim to diversify its economy. Starting off from a capability and capacity development aspect and utilizing a mission to Mars to accelerate that, and also develop scientific research capabilities in space which in the long term sustains your overarching space ecosystem. We've also found an up-and-coming benefit of space within our economy, and more importantly, a large focus on products and services. But first, let's talk about the impact of arriving to Mars and how that's transformed an entire society, not only within the Emirates, but in the overarching MENA region. One of the major impacts of this mission is that aspirational aspect that you spoke about, and infusing inspiration in an entire generation, where today for them going to space and exploring to Mars is something that's normal and that has been normalized. And I see a large shift, especially in children of various ages, and also young adults who are entering into the phases into fields of STEM where before they thought opportunities didn't exist there. And that has provided us with the creation of new jobs and the creation of new opportunities for the youth within the Emirates. Utilizing also the catalyst of this mission was the development of capabilities through a know-how transfer program with universities out of the US. What we've learned there is a mechanism by which you can develop a new industrial sector within your country in an area that you didn't have any experience in before, nor was there an established ecosystem thriving on those matters and on those aspects. Today, what we're looking at is taking a lot of the learnings from this monumental mission and how much it's transformed even the overarching technology benefits for the country. And an importance of technology in the country, and take it to the next level. How do you now go about developing a vibrant industry in space that impacts our economy and feeds to our overarching goal to increase the contribution of industry in the economy from about by twofolds by 2031. And what we're looking at today, we can perhaps even speak to it later because it feeds into a lot of our panelists, is the focus on downstream and building demand for space products and services across different sectors. And that's very important for the sustainability of space overall.
Thank you, Minister. That's fantastic. And the achievements that the UAE has made in such a short period of time are just amazing in the world of space. So congratulations to you and all the folks on your team. That's actually a great segue to our next panelist, Will Marshall, the CEO of Planet. And similarly, Planet has made remarkable leaps in a relatively short period of time, building an incredible constellation. Will, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about how Planet is helping to solve some of the key challenges of the planet, of our home planet, through its satellite constellation, and what more you might have in the future in store.
Yeah, hi everyone, and exactly along the lines of what the minister was just saying, there's a lot of downstream services. A lot of people think of space as far out, but in fact, they have a lot of applications here on the Earth. In fact, if you look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we've assessed that satellite technology can help with at least 13 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And let me just talk a little bit about how. I mean, in many ways, we're trying to transition the global economy to take into account nature, to monitor nature, because we've been previously valuing it zero. And of course, what's the best way to get an understanding of what's going on nature around the world than satellites that enable us to see it all every day. And in fact, that's what we did with Planet. We launched a few hundred, we have a couple of hundred Dove spacecraft in orbit, which image the entire landmass of the Earth and nearby coastal waters every day. And what that's useful for is things like forestry, agriculture, ocean monitoring, and things. So let me just explain that just a little bit more so people can understand. So in agriculture, that's 25% of the land over the Earth, so about a quarter of the land. And satellites are the best way to survey all of that. And it's not just that they can take a picture, but they can tell how the crop is doing, where there's blight, when does the farmer need to add fertilizer or reduce fertilizer or add water. And it's called precision agriculture, and it can improve crop yields by sort of 20 or 40%, which is important. In forests, which is another 25% of the land area of the Earth, we can help stop deforestation, especially in the tropics, where we're trying to protect those primal forests from illegal logging. And so our data can just about see every single tree and tell if there's illegal deforestation. And 40% of the illegal deforestation happens just tree by tree, not in big areas. So we need quite high resolution imagery to be able to do that. And then just finally in oceans, we also have to convert our oceans to be sustainable as well. So sustainable fishing practices can be enforced by satellites looking at boats, often of which take off their AIS beacons when they're doing illegal fishing. And so of course, the satellites can still see them. And so in these and a number of other ways, satellite data, planets and others are helping us to understand all the natural ecosystems and to protect them. And that's an increasingly important thing for our global economy. This little QR code, by the way, it just popped up. George, do you want to tell the folks about
Go
that?
ahead. Why don't you introduce it? That sounds great.
Well, I'm happy to. I mean, it was kind of exciting. If you scan that with your phone, you will see a little Dove spacecraft. I don't know if you can see it on my phone. It's spinning around there, and but if you scan that QR code, you'll see, and you can just play with our spacecraft. So these are very small little boxes, only 10 by 10 by 30 centimeters. They weigh about 5 kilograms. We have, as I said, about 200 of these in orbit, taking snaps of the whole planet every day. It's a and I've got one just behind me hanging, but you can play with it on your phone. But so there's a lot of neat technology in that, and things are changing very fast. It's a bit like the mainframe computer changing to desktop computers, and lots of new capabilities are going up in space, like lots more cameras, but also communication satellite fleets and other things that are enabling internet for rural people that haven't got internet before. So although the technology is pretty cool, the applications on Earth are even cooler. As the minister was saying, there's a lot of downstream services that they can facilitate and enable, and hopefully all towards the ultimate development of quality of life of everyone around the planet.
Thank you, Will. That is absolutely fantastic, and I encourage everybody to check out that QR code. Maybe we can flash it a couple more times over the course of the session. So now we're going to turn to the only panelist, as far as I know, who has been into orbit, and that is Anusha Ansari, who has had such an incredible career. And Anusha, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about all the amazing things that X Prize Foundation is doing in space. And perhaps you can also talk a bit about how the benefits of space and the space sector connect to a subject that Will was talking a little bit about, which was sustainable development goals, and how space can help with the big challenges on our planet going forward.
Thank you, George, and thank you everyone for joining us today on this panel. Maybe I'll start by just talking a little bit about fundamentally X Prize Foundation started off because we wanted to open up access to space, democratize access to space, because we believe the benefit of giving access will be worth it, and it's essential for the future of humanity. Today, when you look at how humans access space, they are constrained by the cost of launch, and that's why the number of businesses and opportunities in the past in the space has been very, very limited, and mostly projects that governments back. But as private launches started happening, combined with Moore's law shrinking all technologies and electronics and increasing the capability of our technology around us, it has enabled us to really be able to examine and look at our planet and our world and our universe through a different lens, a lens that's not, under the clouds or under the interference of our atmosphere or the light around us, and actually go out and from orbit, not only examine our own planet with a wider lens, but also look at the rest of the universe to learn more about ourselves. And that has, led to technologies and companies like Planet and what Will was talking about, where we can accumulate an amazing amount of data that can help us better understand how our world is changing, and better understand the complex dynamics of everything from our weather systems to how people move, how civilizations are changing on Earth. And these are all important information and data that leads us to have services and solutions that helps the sustainable development goal. Another very big factor that has helped the services around space technology is advancement in artificial intelligence and machine learning, because the amount of data that now we're receiving is so much that we need advanced technologies to analyze that data and be able to correlate the data. There's so many different constellations, each taking picture in certain spectrums or looking for certain things or looking at segments of our planet. So combining this data to be able to get a more comprehensive view of our world is great. But not only Earth observation, one thing that everyone at XPRIZE believes is the business opportunities of other things we can do in space. And one that I'm particularly excited about the future is being able to do manufacturing in space, or being able to move our data centers that are a big drain on our planet and our resources and put them in orbit, or other opportunities for solar energy, for example, from the sun, and access to other alternative energy. So the opportunities are endless. The best thing about it is that the access to space now, the costs are continuing to come down. So entrepreneurs, innovators have ability to think of business plans in space, and we've seen investment grow, which is something that excites me personally a lot.
Well, Anusha really kicked off a lot of the amazing renaissance, or I don't know what the right word is, resurgence in commercial space, and we're all deeply grateful to you, Anusha, for you and Peter Diamandis for what you did to really kick off this incredible era in space exploration that is, bringing it to people around the world. So thank you. We're so happy to have Francois Gallier here. He is the Senior Vice President of Telecom for Airbus, which doesn't sound like a small job at all. So thank you, Francois, for joining us this morning. And you are the perfect person to talk about, a hugely important issue, which is the issue of connectivity and how space can play a role in that, particularly for, communities at the edge, communities in rural areas. Maybe you could speak a bit about this general issue of connectivity, and is it possible to, what's the realm of the possible? How can space play a role in connecting the billions of people who are, unconnected or in lower connected areas? So over to you, Francois.
Thanks, George, and thanks to have me today. Interesting, the intervention of the first panelist. I mean, all of those services, those new applications from space will require to transfer data to anyone. And what is interesting is that up to a few months ago, a year ago, connectivity to have everyone connected anywhere in the world was more seen as a kind of universal right, the fact that the nations need to connect their people. But what we have learned from the pandemic that we are in since more than a year now is that it's not only a right, it's an absolute necessity to get people connected. I mean, our economy needs people connected. We have learned from the pandemic that we have been moved out of the cities to work in a remote mode, in teleworking. We have plenty of people who are not going anymore to big cities, who are working remotely. And those people have discovered that when you're out of cities, getting a proper connection can be an issue. So it's not only for the rural, it is for the rural, but it's for absolutely everyone. And my view on it, this period we are in is not just temporary, it's going to last. And I think it's a fairly long-term transition that we are in, where people will stay out of the cities and we need connection everywhere. So what space can bring to that? I think there are two good news. First of all, if we want to get those connections anywhere in the world in a pretty efficient way, I think space can and is already able to bring the solution. Technically speaking, if you see the constellation that are developed at the moment, Airbus is working on OneWeb, and we have just launched the fifth batch of satellites. And in a year from now, the service will be fully operational. We are able, in a year from now, to connect people anywhere in the world with a decent connection. So the technologies are there. And the second good news is, I think it's an efficient and sustainable way to do it. When you have now big geo satellites bringing a very high throughput connections, you are able, and also with our new technology with flexible satellites, so not going to too much details, but a flexible satellite is such that you can adapt the quantity of data and the area of that where you want to transmit the data very dynamically in a second, in a minute. So it means all the assets we will bring up there to give connections can be shared, can be adapted in real time to make sure that anywhere, anyone can be connected in an efficient way. You move from one area to the other, you will get a connection at any time. And I think it's important in our society now to bring some sustainable solutions, that the assets we're bringing are not just only for one, but for most of the people, and that we can share those connections. So, you know, I have two daughters. They are very green, very sustainable world, and they are pushing me. And to be honest, if I get a bit personal, having those kids pushing me to be more green, where you have the proof that now it can be real. You have some solutions to make something sustainable. It's much easier to be convinced to go through it. So let me take an image. You can easily imagine that in a very short term from now, anyone in the world, as you can get water from the river, you can get electricity from the sun, you will get a connection from space. And this connection will be shared with everyone by using efficient assets. So I think we are pretty there. And the good news is that it's very sustainable. So to make a long story short, yes, space connectivity is coming up to connect all those applications, all those services. It's efficient and it's a sustainable solution for our world.
Thank you, Francois. That's a beautiful vision, and congratulations on all the progress with OneWeb and all the manufacturing process you have made at Airbus. It's incredible. So let's see. So now we're going to go into a section where we just ask a few questions, and anyone who feels the desire to jump in can. And so let's talk about the importance of sustainability in the space environment. So, you know, as this incredible profusion of uses and satellites and different activities increases in space orbit, we need to make sure that as sort of a global commons, the space environment is preserved for the benefit of all. It would be great to hear from folks, you know, what are the most important principles or actions that we can all take to safeguard that environment. And also I'd like to just again underline that I think the World Economic Forum is doing some good stuff in relation to the space sustainability rating, which is this joint effort to encourage the private sector to act in ways that ensure the long-term sustainability of space. So I don't know if anybody would like to jump in on that question, but Will, you have a lot of satellites. Maybe you could start off by sharing your thoughts on this subject.
I'm happy to. Yes, space debris is a real challenge. It's like the environment challenge that we have upstairs. It seems almost like humans can't go anywhere without polluting their environment a little bit, and we have a challenge up there. But and actually, you know, when I was working at NASA, I had the opportunity to work on this for a few years, and it really is a challenge. We have more than 100 million pieces of space debris orbiting around the Earth. That's man-made objects, mainly really little things, and we only track routinely about 30,000 of them. And of those 30,000, only 3,000 are satellites that are actually active. So we have 3,000 active satellites and 100 million pieces of other junk. This is leftover rocket bodies and exploded satellites and lots of different stuff. Now, the problem is very different in different orbits, and one of the most important things that can be done is keeping satellites low, where there's a little bit of atmospheric drag and it can pull it down. And so it's sort of self-cleaning as long as the satellite constellations are being put into low orbits. In general, the higher orbits, like 800 to 1200 kilometers, we have a bigger challenge. There we have to start cleaning up those orbits, a bit like we have to stop polluting the rivers, we have to stop polluting space. And that has to do with careful management of pulling down some of the prior pieces or doing space collision avoidance and things like this. There are ways through this. In fact, it's easier than the climate challenge on the Earth for sure. But we do have a significant challenge up there. And luckily, the space community is pretty cognizant of this and implementing a lot of practices to not exacerbate that. One of the bigger challenges when nation states blow up satellites, that can cause big debris fields. So I think we need to work as an international community to prohibit that kind of kinetic event. Also, with these big upcoming fleets of satellites, we need to try to keep them, as I said, in very low orbits. because even if 1 in 1,000 fail, it can be a big problem of a junk in space that can lead to further pieces. I think there's ways forward, and like you said, the space sustainability rating work that has been done by some of the community in and around World Economic Forum is very helpful in this regard. And I think there's a lot of sense of caring for this environment, because we all stand to lose if we start polluting it too much.
George,
thanks, Will.
Add to that, I think one of the important challenges that we need to consider, because you know, on Earth there are different parts of the world are governed by certain agencies and governments and countries, so they can enforce. They have infrastructure to enforce the rules. When we talk about space, it's a little bit like the wild, wild west. So being able to bring nations together and have treaties like the Peaceful Use of Space Treaty, have treaties that will then help them govern the future launches and how the information is actually available and shared amongst all the new companies who are coming along very rapidly. A lot of new launch systems, a lot of new constellation companies are coming around. So creating a sort of an infrastructure that can help us govern the space around us would be very beneficial in the future.
Adding on to that, George, is we in the process of ensuring sustainability for space in the overarching aspect, and all of us understand the challenges that fit into this. The overarching governing framework that was spoken about by both Will and Anusha needs to take into consideration to not be prohibitive for access into space, but and not impose restrictive practices in terms of design and development of spacecrafts themselves. And that takes us into a conversation to look at how to find different mechanisms that Will spoke about in terms of deorbiting from space itself, rather than incurring requirements on the spacecrafts themselves in terms to have deorbiting capabilities, and looking at new technologies that basically come up and clean up space and the surroundings, especially in low Earth orbit, which is the area that has the most commercial benefit today, and has widened the number of entities that are able to enter into it and benefit from space.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think actually just recently there was a company that has launched a test satellite to potentially deorbit. I'm going to use the colloquial term of space trash or something, but that will be a really great thing. Francois, is there anything you'd like to add, or we can move on to the next question?
Well, I think it has been well said by the other panelists. It's a real equilibrium between regulations, common sense from the companies. I mean, it's values from the companies to not send some dirties in the orbit. And well, as you said, in Airbus, we are developing some kind of harpoon or net satellites to catch the debris. But first of all, we should take care for not bringing some garbage up there. So it's a mix again of what do we do in our design to make it so, as we are doing on OneWeb, plus some new technologies to bring them down when something goes wrong. And any business, and I think the economy of space cannot sustain too strong regulations. So, but we have to develop the new technologies to make it cleaner and cleaner.
Very good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I just have one sort of I think a fun question for folks, and that is, what are you most excited about over the next 5 years for the future of space? You know, there's just so many amazing things happening now. You know, new vehicles, new applications, a broad range of countries and companies getting involved in space. What do you look forward to over the next 5 or 10 years, and you know, and how can the rest of the world get involved in that? Maybe Minister Alamiri, would you be willing to start off with that question?
From an engineering perspective, it's a lot of the design changes that will change the norm of spacecraft design. We've seen that over the course of the last roughly 10 years. We'll see that hopefully expedited over the course of the next few years. And that allows us to find different and newer spacecraft systems that are hopefully smaller and therefore allow us to have better access to space and better access to data coming out of it. The other aspect is, again, what the panelists spoke about. today you do not need to own a satellite in space to benefit from space systems. And it's that's going to be the major catalyst, especially for the space economy. And it's the utilization and the creation of value-added services just by taking the wealth of data services that are there. And I think probably Francois will hopefully tap into this. And I think there'll be a paradigm shift because of the design changes to spacecrafts in the telecommunications area.
Terrific. Other thoughts from other panelists? Anusha?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Francois.
Oh, Aisha, go ahead. Please.
Okay. Well, I love space exploration, so I was very excited to read that there is new development to create a mini warp engine. So being able to travel farther, faster would give us a lot more knowledge about the universe that surrounds us. So I'm excited about development in that area. But in general, I think even if it's other, just around our own planet and just in the solar system, new ways of launch system. We've been using rocketry forever now, and being able to really find a sustainable, very low cost way of getting to orbit, I think it helps us advance much further, faster. And also it helps develop the businesses that we want to have in orbit faster. So whether it's, I don't know, a laser-based launch system or a space elevator that has been talked about forever. I think if there are engineers listening, thinking about a new way of access to space and launch system would be great.
Fantastic. Francois, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, just to add, we are speaking about a lot about different applications in space or from space. When one day you will connect all those applications together, and I was thinking of communications, navigations, weather forecast, even Earth imaging. When you bring all these together, can you just imagine the powerful applications you can bring? Let me just give an example. You want to connect an aircraft, and depending on the weather forecast, you will adapt your connection, the throughput of your connection to it. Through the navigation data, you will know where the spacecraft, and you can even land it using the Earth images. So my view is that when you connect all those applications coming from space, you can make really powerful things.
Amazing. Will, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, look, it's so exciting that there's quite a revolution going on in the space sector. We've suddenly seen a tremendous new flood of satellites going into space, much more than before, dramatically increasing the number of satellites going up. And then, we're seeing all these applications. The thing that excites me most is how we can use that revolution to help take care of the Earth, our favorite spacecraft, the one we're all on, that is hurtling around the sun and is the most precious, and especially the life on it. And some of the things that inspire me, we, like last year, did a map of all the world's coral reef, and now there's some nations building marine protected areas around those coral reefs that we've been mapping. And we've been doing a lot of work on tracking the tropical forests in 64 tropical countries, helped by the government of Norway. And that is enabling us to help indigenous peoples manage their forests locally, things like that. So as the minister said, you don't have to go to space anymore to benefit from it. And the value of using all this data to help us and day-to-day activities on the Earth, that's the thing that excites me the most. And I think it's going to be a revolution because of all the new data and machine learning and artificial intelligence that you can build on top of that. It's going to be an exciting ride over the next 10 years.
Amazing, very exciting. Okay, so I think we're on our home stretch here, and I'm about to turn it back over to Nikolai in a couple minutes, our World Economic Forum host, and who's done such amazing work on the space side. But maybe just a final question for anybody, and I don't think we need the whole panel to address it, but I think the issue of governance is a really important one as we close out and as we go forward. Does anybody have any sort of parting thoughts on the issue of space governance and how we make sure that the benefits of space are available to to all, and to make sure that that we responsibly manage that. Are there new thinking, new processes, or new ways of thinking about governance in space to make sure that we have a positive future? So welcome anyone's thoughts on that subject.
Well, I'm happy to chime in. I'm sure everyone has some comments, but the governance of space is a bit like, as someone said, a bit of the Wild West right now. There's not much governance, and we want to be careful to balance between using that domain really thoughtfully and making sure everyone can access it, but also not restricting it too much. I think there's some upcoming challenges. We mentioned the one about space debris and managing that commons and making sure that we can all act up there and get the benefits from low Earth orbit. But soon enough, we'll be challenged with other things too. I name one, when I was at NASA as part of a mission that we sent a little probe to the South Pole of the Moon looking for water, and we found water there, but it's only in this tiny area of the moon on the poles. And so it's going to be a very popular destination for countries and companies alike. And so accessing that water is going to be critical because it's going to make it easier for exploration. So who owns that water? Who can distribute it? Who has the rights to use it? This is all uncharted territory, and I think we need to take a cooperative, but not too restrictive, but we do need to get ahead. I don't think we should just have it the Wild West. I think we should think through how can we ensure equitable access without being too restrictive. And so these are challenges that are coming up pretty quick in the next 5 or 10 years. This is not a hypothetical question anymore. We have commercial companies going there, we have countries going there, and it's going to be a competition. And so we need to think carefully about how we manage those critical space resources on the moon and other celestial bodies.
It's a great point. Any other comments on that subject before we start to close the panel? Anusha, I saw you thinking about something.
Just a quick point that for people to think about. Just the same way that our climate, our ecosystem, even though we own part of it, you know, as we're in countries own parts of it. In order for it to work, everything has to come together. So we have to look at it as an ecosystem. So right now, the issue of climate is something that unless we all collaborate, every nation collaborates, we can't solve it. And in the past, centuries ago, certain countries have utilized the resources much faster than others. So right now, there's sort of this bartering going on. Same thing will happen in space because there are nations who already have advanced space activities and some who don't have those space activities at this time. But if there was a way for all nations to come together and look at this as a resource for every single human being, and all nations collaborate on establishing rules that not only benefit those who have access to space today, but those who will gain access or benefit from space tomorrow as well, I think it would be important. So that having that equity in making those rules would be important step.
That's a great, I think, set of words to sort of start to close out our panel. So thank you for that, Anusha. I'm going to turn it over to Nikolai in a moment, but I just want to say thank you to our panelists, Anusha, Minister Al-Amiri, Will, and Francois. Thank you so much for the fascinating discussion. I mean, it is such an exciting time in space. I hope all the people out there listening get a sense of the incredible range of activities that are going on, from exploration to science to commercial to on and on. And there's great opportunities for young people who are interested in this field. And I hope that people get involved more around the world, whether you're in wherever you are in the world. I think it's a great time to be involved in space. So now I'll turn it over to Nikolai Klistov. He's the lead for space and mobility at the World Economic Forum, who will close out our panel. Thank you so much, Nikolai.
Thank you very much, George. And what a terrific discussion. Thank you very much for taking us, frankly, on a journey today. And of course, a big thank you to all of our panelists for your insights. George, you of course kindly mentioned the forum's efforts briefly already. We at the World Economic Forum are extremely proud to work together with all of you, your organizations, and many other diverse stakeholders from all over the world in addressing the space sector's key challenges and helping take advantage of all the opportunities that the sector brings to all of us. For over 10 years, we have been convening the Global Future Council on Space to consider and discuss among top experts in the field the issues that are most relevant. Last year, the Council published a compendium called 6 Ways Space Technologies Benefit Life on Earth, and currently is continuing to explore ways to support sustainability in orbits, debate ways to promote climate monitoring capabilities, share the benefits of space exploration. We touched on that just now at the end of the session. Another meaningful effort currently underway was initially born also as a Council idea back in 2016, the Space Sustainability Rating. Now it's a joint effort between the Forum, European Space Agency, MIT's Media Lab, University of Texas at Austin, and BryceTech. Now the rating itself is meant to act as a voluntary incentive mechanism for those building, launching, but also operating spacecraft to promote space sustainable operations when it comes to debris mitigation. We're very excited to be nearing the end of the development phase and hope that it provides a more positive and peer pressure mechanism to support other guidelines and efforts that are underway. Now you may find out more on our website about these efforts. We're also currently exploring possible efforts and topics, ways with our partners to address the increasingly important topic of space governance, and more specifically, space traffic management. So stay tuned for more. And with that, I would like to thank all our panelists again very much, all of you for watching and listening, and say goodbye for now. Take care.
Thank you all.